Sarah?
Yes, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Cybersecurity Forum. This is the June version from 2022. There's a number of these that we wanted to point out that are actually on the Impact Washington YouTube channel. So if you want to check out past sessions, please look on there. You can search there. We're doing this to make this a dialogue on cybersecurity so that we can build a community around this topic. I think we all know that it's not an easy one, and it's pretty ripe with a lot of different challenges and issues. And so if we can keep this dialogue going among ourselves, we think we can crowdsource a lot of this information that we have. So if you're new to the forum, you can check that out at our Impact Washington's YouTube channel. But before we get started, I just wanted to thank PNDC for being a partner, such a great partner in this, and such a good asset to the community on this subject. And so I'll turn it over, I guess, to Denise to make the introductions to Dave Henderson.
Very good. Thank you, Sarah. This is such a treat for us. And Impact Washington it wants this to be more about manufacturing, obviously being the manufacturing extension partner in the Northwest. And that's what we're doing today. We are really highlighting some of our manufacturers that have gone through this process. And we're going to talk about best practices and big pratfalls. My name is Denise Reiser, and I am the Market Development Director for the Pacific Northwest Defense Coalition. We represent about 300 members here in the Northwest, and we're happy to help you out and help out your cybersecurity needs alongside our partners and friends, Impact Washington. I don't think we have any, I don't think PNAA is on. Carly, you would tell me if Dale is on.
Not seeing him so far.
Okay. As we get started, you make sure you use that chat function. Use the chat to introduce yourself, put your LinkedIn profile, and chat any questions that you have. We will try to keep up on chatting the definitions of any acronyms used. My colleague Bailey Simpson is in the background, and she's really good at that. Actually, it's one of our most favorite things that people ask is if Bailey's going to do the definitions as we dive into a bunch of acronyms. You can download your own chat at the end of the program. We actually don't download that and copy that. So make sure you, and I'm sure Bailey will tell you how to do it near the end of the program, and you can download it straight to your computer. The agenda is pretty simple today. We're really proud to have David Henderson from Cyberstreams. He's going to talk to you for about a half an hour. 20 minutes or so his presentation is. He'll have about 10 minutes for questions. Immediately following that, we're going to go into our panel, and our friends at Rosemary and Brester and the folks from Evergreen Fire are on, and David will join that panel again to talk about best practices and ask your questions. It's supposed to be an open-ended dialogue, so raise your hand and let us know what you're thinking. We'd love for you to participate as much as you feel comfortable with. I think there's somebody on here from Amazon, and I may Amazon Web Services, and I'm just dropping this on him right now, but I may at the end. I know you've got some things going for our cybersecurity for small businesses, and if you're okay talking about that, please chat that you're okay to Carly, and we'll call on you. We're recording the program. I think that was covered already, and it's available always on Impact Washington's YouTube channel. When it takes a hot minute for it to get all set up and such, but I think Carol gets set up there very, very quickly. So without further ado, I want to introduce David Henderson from, he's a brand new presenter for us on this forum, not a brand new to cybersecurity by any stretch of the imagination, but he's brand new to our forums, and we're really excited to have you meet David Henderson at Cyberstreams. David, you want to take it away?
You're muted, David.
Oh my gosh, isn't that hilarious? And I got your on mute sign. Good morning, everybody, and thank you. It sure is an honor to take a little time to talk to everybody this morning. I want to stress it for me, you know, I'm not a cybersecurity tech geek guy. I am an entrepreneur, founder of a business. I really enjoy developing people and working, and I have a team of guys that work with me. So I take an approach to talking about cybersecurity as a business person talking to other business people. I authored a book, Cybersecurity Essentials, a no-nonsense guide for SMBs. I'll get a link to folks if anybody wants to a copy of that. They can request a free copy off of my website. So I was thinking a lot about what to present and how to do it without PowerPoint slides. And wouldn't you know, last week, I subscribed to the Wall Street Journal, but the Wall Street Journal put out their annual cybersecurity insert, and these are just fantastic, right? And this is information designed for business people, not technologists. So there are a couple of really great articles, and I pulled some bullet points out of those that I'm going to talk about this morning. So 6 points, focusing on tech instead of employees. This is a problem with a lot of companies today, is they see this as a technology problem and it's a culture and people problem. Relying on training instead of attitudes. Leaders that don't set the example, not looking at the small stuff and thinking about the impact on your business, focusing on prevention at the cost of recovery, and missing the competitive advantage. Then I'll talk a little bit about cyber insurance and passwords and MFA. So focusing on tech instead of employees. Boy, you know, I've seen a lot of slides for NIST 800, 171 and CMMC and all of that, and they have a Venn diagram. Culture, process, technology. In the 110 controls for CMMC level 2, I heard Jerry Leishman say that I believe 40% of those are just about people and process and culture, right? So it needs to start there. Boy, if you Google how many ransomware attacks start with a human being, you'll get estimates anywhere from 80 to 90%, right? So clicking on a fish or a spearfish is the #1 way that folks are getting attacked. So relying on training instead of changing attitudes. Researchers are finding that when folks do annual training for cybersecurity, they admit that they're checking email and doing other things while they're taking the training. It's often a one-time event, right? In my business, an IT company, you know, the training is super important. We have a weekly email that goes out that shows the leaderboard on who's taking the training and getting a cybersecurity score. We talk about it during every meeting, and we encourage our clients to do the same thing. If we are having conversations about it, if we're instilling in one of the articles, they talk about instilling a culture of data protection instead of cybersecurity. That brings it more to what we're actually about, what we're doing as people in the business, right? So the last thing on this, relying on training instead of attitudes, it's a great example of what we do a lot of is simulated phishing, right? Because phishing emails are the #1 way that folks are getting attacked, right? So they have an example of a company that has a 5-strike policy. The first time somebody falls for one of these fake phishes, they're assigned to training. The second and third time, they get a sit down with their boss and a discussion around how this is not appropriate and an explanation of what comes next in this process. If they fall for one a 4th time, they sit down with HR and are warned that they could lose their job. And if they fall for it a 5th time, they get fired. Taking it that seriously in some businesses, right? Creating that culture and that environment that says protecting the data and integrity of our business is important. It has to start at the top. We did a consulting engagement as because we're an Impact Washington resource partner, and they assigned it to the IT department. The IT department worked with us very closely. And at the end, there's this cool chart that shows what parts of the business are prepared for cybersecurity, and IT at 100%, and all the other divisions in the company were in the 20 or below. Without a culture, without that, making it a part of who we are in our fiber, our safety programs, that sort of stuff, you put your business at a lot of risk. So leading by example, I see some businesses that have a safety policy, right? And they include preventing cyber attacks as a part of their safety policy. They want everybody in the company thinking about it from the top down. CEOs tell cybersecurity stories during all-hand meetings, things like this. And we're seeing more and more, especially in companies 25 million and above in revenue, starting to expect reporting from the management level up to the board on what they're doing and how they are successful or not successful when it comes to cybersecurity. So 4, not analyzing the small stuff. Here's a really great example. Pretty much everybody needs an SSL certification for their website. This is what helps securitize that website, protect it from attacks. We have a strict policy in our business about monitoring those and renewing them. But there's a great example in this Wall Street Journal article where a company missed a renewal. It was expired for quite a while and ended up costing them hundreds of thousands of dollars because of a breach. Every business should take a moment and have some process as they hire new vendors, make changes in processes, change employees, that sort of stuff, to take a look at what impact might this have on our security profile. So 5, focusing on prevention at the cost of recovery. I love to talk about cyber resiliency, and cyber resiliency is about assuming that you are going to be breached and knowing what you're going to do when it happens. And I have a buddy who is cybersecurity in the Air Force. He works for a large 750-person company, and he says there are 2 kinds of businesses: those that have been breached and know it, and those that have been breached and don't know it. So this is an important part, is knowing that you can be breached and what to do about it. The number one thing is to protect your data. And we like to talk about business continuity and disaster recovery. You hear backup all the time. I worked for a large 45 million a year computer reseller. And I used to walk in on IT people and say, "How are your backups?" And they'd say, "Going great, the backups are great." And then I would ask, "When was the last time you did a test restore?" And they'd all look at their feet, right? A business continuity and disaster recovery strategy isn't just about backing up your data. It's about knowing what you should back up, how you should back it up, and what you're doing to ensure that if you do need it, you can restore it. There are a lot of instances where people are hit with ransomware, and the ransomware attacks their backup as well as their live data, and then they're in a world of hurt. So every company should have a disaster recovery response plan. It's not hard to put together. There are great examples. There are people that can help, but even a 1-page disaster recovery response plan is a good start. So missing the competitive advantage is number 6 in the article. And more and more, right, you're seeing companies ask their vendors, right, their insurance company may be requiring it, this sort of thing. Are you safe? And by golly, if you're a sub in a defense contract, right, quite frankly, if you're not up on your scores with CMMC and State 171, you're clearly out of the business completely. So those are the 6 points that were in this just fantastic article in the Wall Street Journal that I thought it's just really good messaging for business people, right? So I mentioned I was going to talk a bit about cyber insurance. So according to the researchers on this article, in 2021, attacks on small businesses increased by 152% in 2021 alone, 152%, 75% in large companies. Think about that for a moment. We hear about Colonial Pipeline and big hospitals and these sorts of things getting breached, but those folks have big budgets and they're taking it seriously. They don't want to show up in the news, and they will. I sat on a panel with a couple of FBI guys and a FAA espionage expert at the PNAA conference a couple of years ago. And the FBI folks talked about how multiple businesses are getting attacked by ransomware in Seattle every month. They're responding to those that are reported. There are many more that aren't reported, right? So small businesses are especially vulnerable, and largely because they don't take it seriously, right? They're not leading from the top. They don't have a program. They're all full of holes. They just make an easy target. So, if you steal $20,000 from 10 businesses, that's pretty easy to do compared to trying to get 200,000 from one bigger business. So, a lot of people think that your property and liability policy covers cyber attacks. It does not. There's a great example in the Wall Street Journal article of one business that did not have cybersecurity insurance. Their policy covered a small fraction of the $250,000 it cost them to recover from the breach. They talk about a separate company that did have cybersecurity insurance. And as soon as they reported the insurance company, an entire team of resources showed up, forensic experts, lawyers, counselors, right? And they recovered $218,000, virtually cost them nothing to get back into business and back on track. Something we're seeing a lot is that the prices on cybersecurity insurance are going up 10 to 15% this year alone, and underwriting requirements are getting a lot tougher. We're hearing from people quite often these days that are being turned down for their cyber insurance and being asked for help to get through the underwriting process. But there's good news in that, right? The underwriting process is designed to protect the insurance company from losses. But ultimately, what they do is provide you with an exhaustive checklist of the things that you need to do to be ready for it, right? So going through that process will just help to harden and strengthen your business and improve your threat profile. So if you do not have cybersecurity insurance, call your agent, set up an appointment, get talking about that. It's pretty affordable compared to the downside risk associated with it. So the last thing I want to talk about is passwords and MFA. Folks often ask me when it comes to cybersecurity, what is the number one most important thing you can do? As I expressed before, creating a culture around it, making it a part of your business is super important. But there are two things, simple things that happen that oftentimes lead to breaches, and that's poor password management and a lack of multi-factor authentication. So the simple answer is use a password manager. I hear stories about create an algorithm, create some special way that you create a passphrase and all of these kinds of things, right? What ends up happening is you have, on average, folks have 25 to 30 passwords that they have to remember. Each one's unique, so on and so forth. It becomes unmanageable. So what happens? They store it in a spreadsheet, or they write it on a piece of paper in their wallet, these types of things, or they create some pattern that's easy to duplicate. Lastpass is probably the most popular password manager. We support a product for our clients called Password Boss. There's a lot of solutions out there. And it's been in the news that Lastpass has actually been breached before, and that scares some people off. But the fact of the matter is the passwords are all encrypted. Not even they can get access to them. So while there's been breaches there, the passwords are still secure. So if you're not using a password manager today, we recommend that to folks. Whenever you can, let the password manager create the password for the site, and it'll be a big query string of characters and numbers that you'd never be able to remember, but all you have to remember is the important, strong password that you put on your password manager. Then finally, multi-factor authentication. You know, somebody clicks on a link, they land on a site, it looks exactly like the Microsoft login, they put in their username and password a couple of times and it doesn't work. And what they don't know is they just gave their username and password to the bad guys. And they immediately take that to log into your email account and download all your email. But if you have multi-factor authentication on, you know, it could be a text to your cell phone. In CMMC environments, you often see YubiKeys, right? If anybody's ever watched some of Paul's presentations with ProShop, they're a big fan of the YubiKeys. There's a number of ways to create this code, right? A password is something you remember. Multi-factor authentication is something you have. And the combination of the two makes it extremely difficult for the bad guys to hack into your accounts. It's possible, it happens, but it's rare and challenging, especially if you take the step up from using your cell phone to a YubiKey. So again, copying a bit out of the Wall Street Journal, but I really enjoy the articles. I really enjoy what they do. And I can't stress enough that this is not a technology problem. This is a business problem. This is something that requires leadership, thoughtfulness, you know, people, process, and culture. So there you go. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. So David, we actually had a question come in from Matt Arney. So he said, have the password managers really tackled the challenge of working seamlessly across devices and operating systems? Is there a manager that you would recommend working with?
You know, for my business, we offer a product called Password Boss. It's something that we can subscribe to as a company and manage at an aggregated level across all of our accounts. I'm a big fan of Lastpass. I think it's a wonderful product, and there are several good products out there. I often encourage people to use Lastpass. If you're working with a managed support provider, you have an IT provider, check with them first, because if they have a solution that they can manage for you, that's a great place to start. With Password Boss, we can do all kinds of interesting things where you know, we can aggregate passwords to particular users so they can have access to a site but actually not know the username and password for it. So if you dismiss that employee, you go turn their account off and they lose access to everything. So there's some interesting solutions out there. Check with your IT provider first, ask them for a recommendation so you have a partner to assist you with it.
Excellent. Thank you.
David, I know that you worked with a lot of your work with Impact Washington. Can you tell us some of the people you've worked for and worked with, and some of your experiences in that?
Well, I'm not supposed to talk about names. So you know, we've gone and consulted with them on CMMC. So there's been quite a few. And they've ranged from large, you know, 500 plus employees to, you know, a company with 4. You know, what we're exclusive Impact Washington resource partner. So if we find opportunities, we always bring them to Impact Washington. And, you know, we look to structure a program that works really well for these folks. We're a big fan of a product called Future Feed, and Future Feed was actually vetted against over 100 different products by GenEdge. I don't know how many people in here are familiar with all the different MEPs, but GenEdge is, you know, in Virginia, right next to Washington, D.C. So they're a big, kind of high profile. They narrowed that that group down to 25, and then narrowed that down to Future Feed. You can subscribe to Future Feed, and if you have the energy and the commitment, they have training, they have resources, they have assistance. you can get to where you need to be with CMMC on your own with that tool, I believe. We've put packages together with help from Sarah and others over at Impact Washington to supply these clients with a year of future feed, and then partner them up with a compliance advisor to get them rapidly to where they need to be with a SPUR score and POAMs. I know acronyms, but you need that SPUR score to indicate where you're at on the journey and whether your prime will accept that score. And POAMs is your plan of action and milestones. So, and we've helped a number of businesses, small and large, get to that point and then set them loose to manage future feed going forward. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, it sure did. And then this people have signed on to hear a little bit more about cyber hygiene. So can you walk us through? I know you talked a little bit about that, but can we take a little bit of a deeper dive on that? The cyber hygiene practices?
I'm not quite sure how to answer that question, because I feel like I touched on the really important parts of it, which is creating that culture, that environment, the safety. I know I have a 14-point bullet point that I can't rattle off the top of my head, but on the technology alone side of things, you have layers of things that need to be in place. Anti-malware, anti-spam, encryption, the list goes on.
And then David, where do you suggest these folks start with hiring a consultant, or where should they start on this journey?
I'm hard pressed to find a business that doesn't have some IT resource already, right? And that IT resource should be there helping on the technology side of it. And again, right, somewhere around half or a little over half of the controls in NIST 800-171 are technology, right? So they are making sure everything's in place. Also, though, is all that people and process stuff. So I find companies that are successful with this are ones that have a business person that's in charge of it, not an IT person, that it's cemented in the culture and the leadership from the top down. And then I find companies like that, I'm fond of drawing a little pyramid with 3 stories. And the first story is ITIE. The second story is ITIC, and the top story is ITIS. So it's IT is evil, IT is cost, and IT is strategic. So a much smaller portion of the manufacturing community out there views IT as strategic. I have a client that recently got into the process of upgrading to NetSuite, which is a very powerful, very empowering tool in a manufacturing environment, but it requires a big investment in time and money, and he doesn't see it as a cost, he sees it as an investment. Today, protecting your business against ransomware should be thought of more as an investment, more strategic.
Very good. I'm sorry I'm muting and unmuting, but I'm actually in a cafe and there's a lot of extra noise here. So are there any other questions that we can direct directly to David? And if not, we'll just go straight into our panel. Carly, do we have any other questions?
I am not seeing them right now. I can continue scrolling and see if I've got one, but not that I'm seeing currently. Hold on.
Okay. Well, we're just going to go straight into the panel, and David's participating in that as well. So we have what about phishing? David, this question just came in. What about phishing? Yeah.
That's the question. What about phishing? Phishing's been around for a long time, and I think a lot of people recognize it. What's happening more and more today is something we call spear phishing. So I'll give you a personal example. About a year ago, I hired a marketing and sales administrator, and in our new employee onboarding checklist, exhaustive checklist, sitting down and talking about cybersecurity is really high on the list. And I was running around, had some things to do, and I put that off for a few days. And while I was putting that off, she got an email from me. Boy, did it look like an email from me, instructing her to run out and buy $800 worth of gift cards and use your own credit card because, you know, I'm really in a hurry and I'll reimburse you. Well, had I sat down and shared with her the SLAM method, and I always encourage people to just Google the SLAM method and you'll get pages and pages of different examples, but it's sender, link, attachment, and message. And there's some story around that, right? I walk around and talk with employees and customers about the SLAM method. Had she slammed that, she would have seen that the email address was not my email address. She would have immediately known it wasn't me. She picked up the phone, called my business partner and said, Dave just asked me to buy gift cards. I'm uncomfortable about it. I don't want you to make credit card. What should I do? And he said, yeah, don't do that. That was a spearfish. So the bad folks are out there watching LinkedIn with automation. They see that she just got hired. They assign an agent to it. The agent looks over her account and sees that I'm her boss and then crafts an email specifically for my business, specifically for that role to trick her. We call this social engineering. As nerds like to have our own terms, but it is the classic con that's been around for millennia, right? Denise is in Paris. I watched a few YouTube videos recently of a guy who talks about the different scams that people pull off in Paris, walking up and chatting you up. They look suited up and they, oh, I lost my wallet, but I want to sell you some jewelry. So I got some money to get home. There's so many of these cons. So when you talk about phishing, there's old school blanket, mail it out to hundreds of thousands of people, generic. But what we're seeing more and more is with the aid of automation and AI, individual hacking resources can specifically target your business in a very, very specific way. Spear phishing.
You're muted, Denise. I know.
I'm sorry. We're going to move right into our panel. We're going to bring in Shannon Forslin from Evergreen Fire and Security, a great defense contractor in Tacoma, and Rosemary Brester, friend of everyone, from Hobart Machined Equipment, a wonderful and long-standing defense contractor in Hobart. So I want to bring you all in, and I want to ask, and we'll start with you, Rosemary. Can you just give us a brief on where you are in your cyber journey? Where are you right now?
Well, that's a really good question because it's always ongoing. We were fortunate to get a grant through Impact Washington to get started on our processes. And it was probably easier for us at the beginning because we were AS and ISO, and so we already had processes in place and a lot of security and risk management in place. What was probably the hardest for me was they said it didn't have anything to do with IT, but yet it felt like everything was IT to me, and I'm not an IT expert. So at the time, we have interns that work for us. And so I handed the project over to our interns, and they did a wonderful job because they saw things that I didn't even think about looking for, and also research places that I would have never thought to go to. And so the interns still work for us, and they are still in the process of getting us to the point where I feel comfortable, but I don't think that'll ever end. And one of the things that I wrote down is that, you know, when you talk about phishing and people sending you bogus emails and all of that, I have found in our company, a constant reminder has to be said to all of the employees, doesn't matter who they are, even myself, because when I'm overly tired, that's when I'm more at risk, because that's when things happen and you click on a link and it's not who you thought it was. And so those are some of the things that I would really watch for, but we are still not there yet. but we're diligently working on getting everything in place. And we have a lot more, I think, than I would have thought a year ago. But I'm more worried about the cost of the total and final implementation of this and getting that certification, because at the last workshop that you just had, I was listening intently and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, is this really even worth it? Because if you don't have the work to support it, why do you bother doing it at all? Yes, it's great. I mean, you can use it no matter what you do, but I don't know about the flow down that you're going to have to do and who's actually going to be responsible. And you talk about the insurance, and our agency doesn't cover it. So I have to find another agency that will write an insurance policy for us. Yeah, it's pretty daunting. And we're a very small company. We have less than 10 employees and half of those are part-time. So it rests on my shoulders and the people that are here on a daily basis, and they're more worried about getting work out the door. So that's my spiel for right now. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Great. And I'm going to throw it over to you, Shannon. Tell us where you are at right now on your cyber journey. I think you did get a Impact Washington grant as well.
Yeah, so we've been on our cyber journey for a long time. So this is not new, being a classified, doing 95% of our business is DoD classified contracts. So this was not anything new. However, it did expand over into what we're going to call what we considered in scope, right? Because our entire environment would be considered in scope just because of the kind of work that we did. So yeah, our journey has been, I think in the beginning, I think I went through so many CMMC, CUI spiels. Actually, I went through one with PNDC down in Oregon, which was really great. But I think by this time, I don't want to see another CMMC presentation. I think I've heard it all. Nothing's changed. The guidelines are starting to change a little bit, but it's all pretty much leveled out. We've just stayed stuck with the same controls. I think the thing that in the last 2 years, we've had a lot of changes in the way we do business. So most companies, no matter how, if you're small or mid-sized like we are, we accelerated our business digital transformation during COVID, because we went from being a mainly in the office on-prem type of work environment to we hit the gas and all of a sudden now we are hybrid. And so our ability to execute on those digital strategies going forward while considering our business strategies and how much funding would be available, right? So that we don't price ourselves out of our market, but there's regulatory requirements, operational plans that we had to put into place. But still our current IT culture was oriented more toward operational excellence rather than supporting a business transformation. So even no matter how good you did at your business continuity plans, this flip side, it was that most businesses like us were hampered by inability to really think about evolving technology best practices or the practical steps to get to an enterprise-wide agile environment with essential technologies that we all need: centralized repositories, data classification, retention, and automation. So as of right now, we've moved forward and are trying to, I say we are in compliance, of course, but we are moving now toward getting away from this hybrid and going to cloud. I think if we go back and do it all again, we would just go GCC high and not try to do all these other mitigations to try to meet the requirements. Denise, you're on mute.
Yes, you are. You poor thing.
Okay. And what I was saying was, if you have a question for any of our panelists about their journey, go ahead and ask it in the chat, and Carly will ask it for you. I can't actually see the chat so right now, but she will ask it for us. So going forward, David, did you have anything you wanted to add to what the two ladies spoke about?
Oh man, I could talk for a long time on it. Coming into compliance with something Rosemary touched on, is it even worth it, right? Gosh, it is expensive to get to CMMC to be where you need to be with that. And it really is a tough decision for some folks. From time to time, I'm taking calls from people that are feeling blindsided. I spoke with a gentleman who was the only person that could produce a very particular type of can. And he said it was like, the old ham cans where you have a key and you open it. And it was considered CUI. So controlled unclassified information. And he would get an order from the torpedo base over in the Bremerton area, Kitsap County, and then he would sub it out to another manufacturer, but he couldn't find a manufacturer that was CMMC compliant. And my recommendation to him was to go back to the government and say, this shouldn't be CUI, and try to get them to reclassify it. Mark Berman, who owns Future Feed and spoke at the PNAA Cybersecurity Forum, I think 2 summers ago, said if you can figure out how to not let CUI into your business, that can be a really good strategy as well, right? Can you go and see the CUI at your upflow? It's tough, those decisions. Shannon mentioned GCC High. For people that don't know what that is, that's a Microsoft Office environment specifically designed for government contractors. I was just talking to Aaron Theoson, and he was looking at that, and just subscribing to it was significantly expensive. But what he didn't understand was that setting it up and configuring it and making it work and keeping it working properly is a huge burden, right? We've worked with a few folks helping them get into something called Quick Track. There are a number of tools out there where you can sequester your CUI into a very particular environment. So if you got 50 people in your business and you can narrow it down to just 5 that need to touch the CUI, and then get one of these, they call it an enclave, get an enclave, right? That can be a way to get there quickly. None of them are cheap. None of them are easy. And it isn't flipping a switch, right? I'm here to say this over and over and over again. I said it in my talk, right? It has to start with leadership, right? The number one person in the business has to make this important, make it a priority, right? Or it'll fail. You won't get there. You won't be able to stay there.
Very good.
I'd like to add on to that. I think that culture is really important. I think that if you are in the upper ups of we call them the up tops, if you're the executives, one of the things that I don't think is really clear is that IT professionals are not skilled the same. So just because you have somebody who happens to be a systems administrator does not make them a Microsoft stack engineer. It does not make them a cybersecurity person either. It does not make them a network engineer. So when you're looking at the different skill sets, if you have a 1-person IT department, even going out to vendors, we've never had a good, we've tried to go out to consultants and vendors for our business to help us out. It never works for a couple of reasons, right? But at the same time, I think that it's that from the top down, that culture also has to evaluate the bandwidth and skill set, because your IT professionals cannot change tires on a moving car while they're maintaining. They cannot initiate projects while they're maintaining what's happening, or having a good rollout of new technology or processes or policies. So I think those are really important too. So aside from the training culture and making sure the people know, is that those executives have to be willing to, right? It's going to cost. It's either going to cost them money or technology. And we're pushing to apartments both.
And I think Rosemary's comment about trying to decide without having an order from the DoD whether or not you go to all this expense before you do that is very valid. Rick, you've got your hand up. What do you want to contribute?
Yeah, so at a talk last week, they mentioned that if you're handling CUI and you have managed security or a managed security operations center, that company has to be certified as well. They're going to have to get certified. Is that true, Dave?
Yep. Yeah. I see Raj is on the call from Intech. you know, he's doing a lot of this for clients, and I'm sure he would agree that for companies like Cyberstreams and Intech, finding tools that qualify that sort of stuff, it is a big challenge. There are very few IT companies in the Seattle area that can touch this. There's lots that say they can. There's very few that actually can. It's a challenge.
Yeah, I agree. I think you know, there's a lot of moving pieces, and one of the things that we've done from the beginning is we've put ourselves through the CMMC process. So we've been you know, walking the walk, and we're, you know, we've had to go through our CMMC 1.0 and then now 2.0 and convert everything over, move, you know, change all the system security plans and all of that. And, you know, we've gone to our clients that we're doing this for, and we've told them, you know, this is a lot of work that we're doing now with, you know, updating to 2.0. So since we're the ones that are going through the process as well, we're able to really understand how the process works. And, you know, for the most important part is our employees understand the controls, and our environment is secure as well, because we're following the process. So yes, it is very critical that you work with an organization that understands, and like you know, Dave mentioned, not only just say that they understand CMMC, but ask them about their poem and ask them about their journey, because that's the ultimate test.
Yeah, that's interesting. I want to switch to cyber hygiene now, because that's really what we want to talk about. And two topics. I want to talk about cyber hygiene. I'd like for Shannon and Rosemary to tell us about one thing that they put into place right away that was affordable to make their companies just a little bit more cyber secure. Rosemary, you want to take that one first?
Wow, right away what we did? Well, first
Yeah.
of all, our employees, it was really difficult, but they're not allowed to have their cell phones in the office. And so that was hard, because younger people today, they live on their phones and they research everything on their phones. And so it was a learning experience for them that they had to use our computer equipment in order to do that, and also have to log into their own account so that we could track what they were doing. I know that seems a little odd, but for me, I'm the responsible person here. And as a family-owned company, everything that I have is on the line. And so I want to make sure that we are safe and secure as well. So those are, you know, some of the very first things. Prior to that, though, they all had to go through an extensive training program on cybersecurity and safety here for our company. And that also, I think, was very helpful. They also listened in on, I cannot tell you how many Zoom meetings about CMMC. And I think that also was very beneficial to them as well as us, because I then could have a meeting with them and we did a debrief so we could all be on the same page. And it is interesting, the different backgrounds of people, and you talk about the culture, they all saw some of these issues differently. So it was really nice to be able to have that on the table and actually have everybody talk about it. So those were some of the things at the very beginning that we did.
Hey, Denise.
Very good. Yes.
Yeah, on cyber hygiene, I pulled up a list that I've used in some other presentations. So I'll go over these really quick. Number one is creating a culture of safety, right? I've harped on that several times. Shannon mentioned it, right? If it isn't a priority for the business from the top down, you'll fail. So creating that culture and understanding that you know, any moron can print out private information and carry it off their car. Right. So there are all kinds of technology to help, but people will find all kinds of ways to screw it up. And guess what? Technology is run by people. So people culture, that's step one. Let's imagine I'm talking to somebody that's one or two people. They can't afford IT, and they want to do at least the minimum that they can do to protect their data. So first is installing a reputable antivirus. In a presentation for camps, I was asked, is Windows Defender that comes with Windows, is that good enough? And my answer is yes, it is. It's actually a pretty good application. The trick is it on and running and are you managing it? We recommend WebRoot, and we could go on a long discussion about the different options that are out there and how they work, and are they all automatic, or do they send information to somebody to review it manually? There's a lot of cool solutions out there that combine technology and humans together to have a better threat profile, but at least have a basic antivirus software. Firewalls. Shannon mentioned going to a hybrid environment. When we set up a new employee for a customer that's going to be working from home, we ask them what they're using for their internet, and we gain access to that. And quite often what we find is it's set to the default username and password. So every firewall everywhere needs to be on, password protected, and needs to be updating, right? A modern home-based firewall should have auto update. So be behind a firewall if you can. Update your software regularly. Windows will update Windows, but it won't update Acrobat. And there's all these softwares they're using that can have vulnerabilities. So ensure you're keeping them up to date. I talked about password managers, right? Strong passwords, that kind of stuff. If you can, get a dark web scan. I'm sure Raj does that for his clients. I do it for mine. Have any of your passwords been breached? If they are, go change them, right? Please use Lastpass or something like that and let it choose the password. Then multi-factor authentication. I touched on this before. I think that is a very key thing to have. And I turned on everything I do. I don't care if it's LinkedIn, Facebook. If they make it available, I turn it on, and I encourage folks to do that as well. And then device encryption. We run across this a lot when we're looking at prospective new customers. They don't even know it's possible. So you bring your laptop out into the wild, somebody steals it, they can pull your laptop out and copy your data. If it's encrypted, they can't. And it's really simple to do. You could do it yourself, but keep your devices encrypted. And then backing up your data, right? Really, this is what we're trying to protect, is information, right? And as I mentioned earlier, backing up isn't enough, right? Lots of ransomwares hit an environment and they attack your environment and your backup. These folks sometimes will lurk around on your network for weeks and weeks and weeks to really understand what you've got, then lock it up, then start threatening you. So employ a backup system that can guarantee your data, your protected data is firewalled from your environment, and just keep your systems tidy. Remove things that you don't need. Clean up your hard drive. Do some basic maintenance in your environment. So that would be that'd be kind of a standard 8-step cyber hygiene checklist right there.
Very good. And I want to go to you, Shannon, and same question to you. What was the first thing you put into place, and did it help, or was it hard first a couple of years ago, if you can think back?
Right. I think one of the best things was when we actually went to the Microsoft 365 Enterprise, because while there was a lot of things that we were doing manually, we were at the mercy of it being manual. So we relied on people, right? That's not a very good maturity model. So when we were able to actually initiate some of it comes with tools, it comes with configurations that you probably need somebody. I wouldn't say the average person could go in and configure these tools properly and test them out. You need probably a mentor or somebody that could do that. And that's what we did. I bartered my high-end cyber knowledge from administrative executive level to pick the brains of other technical people. And I helped them put out their CMMC journey if they would help us with configuration. So it didn't cost anything, right? It was people who are willing to help others. But because when we're able to label our data, it takes away from the people problem. right? Because then you can enforce a policy of what can be done with that data, and or that we would have notifications and logging, and all this is very automated. So we were able to encrypt data at sensitivity endpoints or device endpoints. We could auto classify with sensitivity labels, and we were able to introduce machine learning so it learned from those things. Those are all things that we're able to track and monitor sensitive content and pull reports on regularly. So we're not getting alert fatigue that comes out of logging and automation. So I think that and it's a journey. So it takes a while in order to get that really honed in, and then we're able to continuously monitor. So I think even if companies aren't holding CUI, they still have sensitive data, right? Whether it be proprietary information, business information, the secret sauce to whatever makes your company tick, and your employees' information. So there's still a sense that these things can be also put into place, and it comes with your package.
Very good. Raj, you have your hand up, or you had your hand up. Maybe you put it down.
No, yeah, and thank you, Denise. I just wanted to add one thing that I think gets missed, and Dave alluded to this a little bit ago about how every IT company is now a CMMC expert. One of the things that I think that you should ask, one of the questions that you should ask when you're working with folks is, where are your employees based out of? Do you outsource? Because that should tell you a lot about whether this person, this entity understands CMMC or not. Because if you're not, if you are exposing your data to an outsider, somebody that is not a U.S. citizen, not a permanent resident of the U.S., then at that point, that is considered an export. So if they're using an outsourced company, which a lot of these folks, they'll one-person shop, two-person shops, their entire back end, their support is in Philippines, India, Ukraine, you name it. Well, they should not be on your systems at that point, or at least those folks should not be on your systems, and they should be restricted from accessing your systems. So that's one of the questions that does not get asked. I think, as I'm educating folks out there, they're working with companies and they talk about how cheap one company is versus another. Well, I mean, you get what you pay for. You just need to understand what's happening. And a lot of times these folks that are so-called experts, they may not be leading you in the right direction. So please do your due diligence.
I would like to
Shannon.
put on to that. We've had horrible experiences with that, just what he said. So we have a vendor vetting program, a very serious vendor vetting program that assures not only is it U.S. citizens who are accessing, right, whether it be logical data or physical space for sensitive areas, but yeah, we ask those questions. We also ask if they use consultants. We found that if a company has consultants, which may work for their business model for commercial, it doesn't work for the sensitive environment areas. We end up changing. There was a lot of turnover, and it was a lot of things that we'd be told out of scope. I'm sorry, that's more money. That's out of scope. And pretty soon, we're $100,000 in and nothing to show for it. I would say that I would pack that. And I have a great form I'm willing to share. There's no sense in recreating the wheel. That's what I think these environments are made for, so we can share best practices. And if anybody would like that, just contact me.
I love it, Shannon. Thank you. I have the same probably not the same form, but similar form that allows you to vet a vendor for this specifically. So please reach out to me if you require that. I had another thought which just completely escaped my mind. So I will raise my hand at some point once it comes back to me.
Oh, you're not even that old. That happens to me like 900 times a day. You're kind of young for that to be an issue, Raj. So now we're going to switch a little bit, and I want to talk about, and we'll start with you again, Rosemary. What is one mistake that you made that you're willing to share? You don't have to say that you maybe spent some money where you shouldn't have, or something like that. As people are talking about their journey, and the manufacturers in this room, what is one mistake that you made that sharing with your fellow manufacturers might help them prevent that mistake.
Well, I think at the very beginning, when we did get our grant, it would have been helpful for me to have a broader choice of companies that could help support us. And what I mean by that is it was very quick. We only had a certain amount of time to get that grant utilized. And it was my understanding that it had to be a company in the state of Washington. And then I found out afterwards that it did not have to be. And so I think that was probably one of the biggest mistakes. And again, for me, it was pretty overwhelming because I was the one that had to do and make all of those decisions pretty much on my own. And who was I to ask? I mean, we talked to Impact Washington and they were a great support, but it was after the fact. And now, and I will share this with everyone, we are inundated on a daily basis, 4 and 5 different companies approaching us wanting to help do CMMC and all of that. And so now it's like, oh my gosh, I'm just turned off because who do you go to? Who is the right choice? And again, you can spend a lot of money and still not get anywhere. And so that's one of the things that I would caution about is make sure that the people that you do choose to work with really do support you and understand your situation, because not every business is the same. Yes, we have to have the ultimate goal is to get that certification, but we are in compliance and have been for a long time, but it takes a lot of work.
So it sounds like we need like a Yelp rating system for cybersecurity professionals.
Well, it would be nice to know what other people's experiences are. I'm not saying that the people that we used were bad. It's just that they were IT people, and yes, they understood cybersecurity, but they certainly, even though they were a small company, I think that maybe there was a better fit for us.
I think
How would I know
Okay.
that? Who would I know that? You know?
To add to that, Rosemary, one of the things that we're seeing when we are brought in either for prospecting or cleaning up something is related to CMMC. There's just, people signed contracts, people, companies wanted to get on board and get going on CMMC. There was a lot of fear. So they started going through the process, and a lot of the vendors did not understand what they were doing either. So what we're also discovering, one of the mistakes that we're discovering is people, these companies installing the wrong tools in your environment. So for example, we came across somebody that was scanning for CMMC information or PII, personally identifiable information, and the tool that they were using was based out of Israel. Well, you can't export that data. And I had this huge argument with this company, and they were like, well, we're only exporting metadata. Well, okay, then you don't understand your client's environment, because even the metadata contains or may contain CUI or FCI. So, have you classified your data internally? No. Do you know where your CUI or FCI is? No. Then, what makes you think that that you can, send this metadata across to another country? That is a violation at that point. So a lot of these are just simple things that a lot of these organizations, a lot of these companies just do not understand. So yeah, please ask clarifying questions, and reach out to folks like us. We don't charge for basic consultation. If we don't have an agreement, there's nothing to charge you against. So feel free to email, contact us if questions come up. There's just, it feels like it's like the wild west for a lot of these organizations to get a quick make a quick buck. So we don't have any salespeople. I'm the founder of the company. Whatever we sell, we stand behind. So you want to be careful with who you're doing business with, especially in this environment right now.
Thank you.
Shannon, Michael, I see your hand up and I'm going to call on you, but I want Shannon to, if she's willing to share a mistake on that. And I also want to say Dave Henderson also is a good provider that's been vetted by Impact Washington as well. So go ahead, Shannon, take it away.
I would say, well, I think the first mistake was trying to continue down a project path that we knew wasn't going to fit for us in the long run. I think that going with Microsoft 365, regardless of the licensing that you have, is that no matter what you do, you're still going to end up with other tools and mitigations in order to make it compliant. And so for the same amount of money that we've spent to this day, we would have been better off going with GCC High for all 150 employees. So I think money-wise, and at some point in time, it's just, you know, letting go of a sunk cost. I think the second part is it's more the culture of the IT environment, is the power of introverts not wanting to reach out to others that are maybe better skill sets, or for feedback, or for help, or even reach out to vendors when we get stuck. So is I think for us that are more introverts, that we are able to push them to get to those solutions faster. I think that we would have it would have saved a lot of time and headache for everybody. So I think those are the two items.
I have
Very
one.
good.
I have one, Denise, that a mistake that I see. Can I share?
Sure.
One of the things that I'm constantly educating our clients on is you do not need to eat the cost of your CMMC journey. You need to keep track of it, and then you can actually pass that cost on with your new contracts, but you need to be aware of your costs. So a lot of times what happens is this gets packaged into IT costs, and those are tracked a different way. What I would do is work with your finance folks, work with your CFO, and create a separate GL code for this journey. Put all of your costs against that, and then there's always grants that come up by Impact Washington and other organizations that then you can take advantage of, and also then you can keep track of that and see what that journey has cost you over time, and then all of your new contracts should reflect that cost. That's a mistake if you're not passing that cost on to onto your new contracts.
Great. Michael, you got a comment?
Yes, I do. Thank you. One of the largest mistakes I'm seeing as I audit companies for CMMC compliance is just a lack of awareness of the documentation. The National Institute Standards and Technologies, they've put forth all the publications that we need to understand our compliance objectives. So the biggest mistake I've seen is that they reference special publication 800-171 that lists all 110 checkboxes you need to be compliant in your environment, but they don't always reference the companion document -171A. And for each of these controls, they have what are called compliance objectives. And maybe on one control, you have A through F in terms of compliance objectives. And what I find about these objectives is they typically fall under three categories, which is identifying what you have, having a way to monitor it, and what mechanisms are in place to protect it. And so if you answer a question for an auditor from the perspective of just the 110 NIST controls, you may find out that you're missing out maybe 2 out of 6 compliance objectives. So by referencing the documentation carefully, it should give you all the information you need to know without a doubt that you either fully meet the compliance objective or not. And I bring this up on the topic of vetting consultants, because if you've ever taken your car in for repairs and you're not sure how to validate the information the mechanic is giving you, and you're concerned that if you take it in for a second opinion, you'll get a similar experience of being told what's wrong with your environment and the cost to correct it, it can be difficult to make those comparisons without anchoring to some solid documentation. So I'm hoping everybody references that companion document, and whether they are technical or not, try to get as close to understanding your compliance objectives as possible.
Very good. Thank you, Michael. I think Dave Henderson was talking about future feed earlier on, and I think it does some of that. Dave, can you confirm?
Yeah, as I mentioned before, it was vetted out of 100 different possible solutions by GenEdge. Is sort of the top solution. And I mentioned before that when we have partnered with Impact Washington, we include it with it. And Future Feed is specifically designed to cover everything Michael was just talking about, all of that, right? Every little checkbox, the entire thing. So it's just a phenomenal tool to walk you through that process of continuing to increase your scores and, you know, ensuring you have the right plans in place. It's funny, if you go to their website, there's a little dashboard and it has a circle in it with green. And I mentioned before that we did a project with a large provider and the IT part of it was fully green and all the others were small. So, you know, focusing on the checklist, as Michael mentioned, super important. And what you'll find out is a good deal of those have nothing to do with technology.
Great. Is there any other manufacturers on this call that's willing to tell us a mistake they made and what they would do differently, or something in the cyber hygiene that they put in place that we haven't talked about yet? Is there anyone else on this call? Just unmute yourself. Nope. Okay. Cost-wise, I want to talk a little bit about that. Rosemary touched on it a little bit as well, but I would like to understand the cost for maybe some of the new manufacturers, and does it vary by employees, and how does that work in the cybersecurity hygiene area? Shannon, why don't we start with you on that?
Sure, we do so for our cyber hygiene, we have I think our people take all of 50 something hours just in security training, compliance and security training, mainly aimed at security, but throughout the year. And then they also get a special briefing based on the type of role that they have in the company that covers sensitive information training. So it's very in-depth and specific to exactly what they handle on a regular basis, and then they're tested on it. So I think as far as like people and a good cyber hygiene is that's where we start, right? We always start with our people first. So, and then getting down the nitty gritty. We have a way for reporting to happen. So we have phishing reports, but we also have suspicious contact reporting, which is different. So we have a couple of mechanisms that we cover it with.
Very good. Rosemary, how much are you putting into this issue? Probably a lot.
You know, it's not so much the money, it's the time. And we spend an awful lot of time because the people, you know, they're getting paid regardless. So one of the things that I do regret now, and I don't think it's regrets, I wish I would have done earlier, is actually keep a spreadsheet of the actual hours that we have spent on this actual process, because it's ongoing. And I think that that's something that everyone should be able to do, is put a spreadsheet together and really track what they've done, because it's really important, because then you can actually see where the value is or where it's non-value added. So for me, that's something that we're going to start doing here. But again, being a small company, it's not something that you think about doing. If you have a larger company and you have different segments and different areas of expertise, then it's, I can't say it's simpler, but at least it's more manageable. For me, I'm managing it all, and it's pretty complicated.
Yeah, some of the, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, Dave, you put something in the chat. Do you want to share that with everyone?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier, I mentioned an enclave, and the company we support, it offers this tool called Quick Track. They just got a wonderful blog post that touches on the cost of maintaining CMMC. So it's there. I think it's a good read. It's scary.
And Raj, you were going to say something?
Yeah, let me just lower my hand. So A few big costs that I'm gonna point out that everyone that is following their CMMC journey is going to have to spend money on. One is a SOC and SIM solution. That's essentially what takes all of your logs, aggregates all of your logs, so all of your errors, your hey, so and so logged into your account or tried to log into your account from Russia on this PC, your antivirus talking to a single point, all of that is necessary, and not only the logs, but you need some sort of intelligence behind that takes all those logs and triages each of the logs, and then there's an actionable item that comes out of that. So for example, if somebody is trying to log into your Office 365 from Russia and you have no business in Russia, well, guess what? That IP or that block of IP should be blocked from trying to log into your account. So there's a lot of things that come with the SOC and SIM solution, but that's one of the bigger costs that you're going to have to take on. And there is no one size fits all. For example, you can buy Splunk. Splunk for some of our clients is $80,000 a year. And then there are other smaller companies that do almost exactly what Splunk does, but they're $20,000 a year. So there's a huge difference in the products, and that's only one of the products I'm mentioning because that's one that usually requires the most amount of money on a monthly basis. There's a few other costs, but you're going to spend money to get into compliance, because chances are a lot of what you are having to do in going through the CMMC journey is just improving your security posture, and that is going to require some additional tools in your environment. For Intech, we treat every one of our clients the same, so everyone gets SOC and SIM solution, because we typically work with clients that are regulated, and usually most of our clients are in the manufacturing space, so all of our clients get the same set of tools. But there are several subscriptions you will have to sign up for, several tools that you'll need. Before you purchase anything, please do your due diligence. Like I said, there's a big difference between $20,000 and an $80,000 bill for the same tool.
The other, I didn't realize we were talking about cost. I think I probably glitched out that point. One of the costs that was really worth it for us was that we have an internal scanning system that can give us kind of the same thing that a penetration test would have. But annually, every 6 months, we actually we have a contractor do an external penetration test. And that actually is really a lot of great things come out of that, because you know where your priorities are, where you're going to put either your money and your people to fixing and gaps. And it's amazing how new ones come up, right? Because technology is always changing and the threats are always changing. So I say the penetration test, it's not as costly as you might think, depending on the scope of what you're doing. But I say it's about $2,000 for our external penetration test, and it's well worth it. I say that was probably one of the best things that we have on our annual schedule.
I'm sorry to take on 30 more seconds, but to add to what Shannon just stated, this is where the difference comes in when you're using a vendor or even your internal IT to know that you need an external test or external penetration test, but not only once a year, but if you make changes to your firewall, let's say you open up a port or you put in a new firewall, your IT company or your internal folks, they do anything with the outside controls of that firewall, they need to do some sort of external testing, because how do you know if you made a change? How do you know if you did not open up any new holes? So it's critical that that cybersecurity, hygiene, and these practices get embedded into your IT practices, because this is not just about hiring somebody and then they come in and check a bunch of boxes and they say, good job, you are now CMMC certified. It doesn't, that it is continuously, it needs to be continuously monitored, it needs to be continuously improved and audited in order for you to in order for you to actually be successful in this journey.
Thanks, Raj. Does anyone else, I'd really like to understand some of this, if anyone else, and if not, Sarah, you put a bunch of stuff in the chat. Do you want to go over some of that information that you loaded in there? Sarah Stewart from Impact Washington.
I'll find the mute button. Yeah, I was just saying that, I'm a big fan of there's a lot of technical stuff that's involved with this for sure. But I think if you're going to be taking this on, reading the standard yourself is a great idea. It's especially if you're used to ISO and AS 9100, a lot of those processes that you need to put in place are going to look exactly the same. They should dovetail in with your quality system. There's no sense creating another training process and all that other kind of stuff. So NIST, the creator of 800-171, has done, I think, a really good job creating some pretty cool tools. So that's in that link. And then I wanted to talk about just a little bit, just as like a silly little thing we do at Impact Washington, but we have a wonderful IT team of one, and he shows us little examples of emails that people caught, and we play find the phishing clue, turn it into a little competition. And I think we've caught way more since we started doing that. We've caught way more phishing attempts than we had when we were still clicking on stuff. So
I don't even know what to say about that, except for Raj does our cybersecurity, and I have multi-factor authentication on my AirPods now. So he puts it on everything. I can't even use my credit card without talking to Raj. So that might have been some of
Yeah, but Raj can. So
yeah, Raj can. Yeah, he probably got it from my I sent it over email, so he has it there. That's probably scares the heck out of him. All right, well, thank you so much for everything. I know we have I think Dave talked about cyber insurance. We have Rick Rosenberry from USI on the line. If you're interested in that, we have a few folks from Impact Washington, and they're a good partner for you. I mean, it's worth a phone call. It doesn't cost you anything to check in with them. Carol Bladen, Sarah Stewart, and Steve, I don't even, Capuano, Steve?
Capuano, very good, thank you.
Oh, very good, okay, on the line. And you're going to get a survey after this event, and we want to hear from you. Impact Washington, if they continue to support these things, wants to know what you want to hear about, what you want to learn about. So please take the time to fill this out so we can bring you better content every single time. Sarah, did you want to say any final words to our group?
Nope, just everybody have a great day, and give us a call if you need some help.
Yeah, don't forget to download your chat. And I want to thank our panelists, Rosemary Brester and Shannon Forslin, both are powerhouses in their fields. Thank you so much for participating. And let's see, what did Carly put up there? I can't see it.
It is just a reminder. We've got our next cybersecurity forum coming up in July. We're looking at Tuesday, July 19th for that event, and really looking forward to bringing everyone back together next month for that. And then the last piece we have is Impact Washington. Just a reminder that on their YouTube channel, Impact Washington's YouTube channel, you can go and visit all the past forum recordings, literally up until last May. And we will be uploading June's information here within the next few days. So as always, we just greatly appreciate your support, and thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you. And live from Paris, I'll say bonsoir to you folks, because it's 7:30 at night. So I'll talk to you later. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.